Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everybody. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I was supposed to do a live session on some of your Quran questions and other questions that come to me from Bayyinah TV subscribers earlier today. I didn't get a chance to, so I'm doing that now. So I'm going to get through, I think it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 or so questions, and there's something additional that I wanted to talk about, and hopefully I'll get some of your feedback, inshallah, when you watch this video, either live or later on. So the first question I wanted to discuss with you, somebody asked that if they've engrossed themselves in a bad habit and they can't seem to get out of it, what would be some advice from the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ to be able to get out of a bad habit? A couple of quick things. In al-hasanat yudhibna sayyi'at, good deeds do away with bad ones, and that can also mean that if you fill your time with productive activities, good things, then the same time that you were allotting to worse habits is going to get replaced. So that's one possible solution. The other, of course, is a change of environment and a change of company. And that's a really big one, because a lot of our habits have to do with the environment we put ourselves in and the company that we surround ourselves with. So inshallah, you can, if you can become aware of not just the bad thing that you do, but what are the outside circumstances that lead you to become that way or lead you into that behavior, then inshallah that should help you avoid that kind of thing. Somebody asked a question that I get asked quite often, actually. It's what is the sign that Allah is happy with me, or what's the sign that Allah is unhappy with me? So a quick thing about that, there are lots of signs of that, but one easy one that you can and I can think about is, what is Allah having me do in a given day? If I am engaged in things that make Allah happy, that's actually maybe an indication that Allah in fact is happy with me. And if I'm engaged in things that Allah is unhappy with, then that's pretty much a sign that Allah isn't happy with me, and I need to change that. So it's actually an equation between our behavior and our, how Allah thinks of us. So we need to make some changes in our life. Somebody asked a very heavy question. I won't be able to answer it, but I will point you to some things. Somebody asked why, if the mission of the Prophet ﷺ was to liberate the Kaaba and to remove idol worship and then spread the message of Islam, why did the Muslims continue to expand the empire of Islam militarily? And this is a question of whether or not Islam calls for da'wah, or invitation to itself, universally, or does it call for conquest universally? That's a heavy question. It requires a lot of history study and a pretty in-depth study of the events and the objectives of the Prophet's own career, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I think what would help with that, for starters, would be a study of Surah Al-Fath. That's the 48th surah of the Quran. And I've done a pretty detailed analysis of that surah. I've posted it on Bayyinah TV also. So you should probably check that out to address this question for starters. The second part of this question will probably get addressed when I engage in a deep study of Surah At-Tawbah, the 9th surah of the Quran, which will happen maybe in a couple of years, which leads me to another question about Quran study. Somebody asked when I'll complete my series on Surah Al-Kahf. I left it halfway. I got involved with Surah Ali Imran. I'm in the middle of the teaching of Ali Imran currently, and that'll probably take me another year to finish. So I'll be probably immersed with Ali Imran study for quite some time, especially as we're reaching the half of Ali Imran. From then on, it's a pretty exhaustive commentary on the Battle of Uhud. So I have to do some extra studies on the Battle of Uhud myself before I start, commenting on those ayat, inshallah, and doing taking advantage of our research team. So look for those lectures also on Bayyinah TV. Somebody asked, after completing the Arabic with Hüsna series on Bayyinah TV, what should I do next? My advice, if you finished and you did well, you understand the material from Arabic with Hüsna and you've internalized it, then your next step should be to go through the concise commentary on the Quran that I've done and just take notes on the vocabulary, and then pick up on questions, the grammatical questions as they come up, and you can post those questions to me. You can post them under videos like these. If they're Arabic questions, I can't help myself but get into them and answer them, inshallah. So that will be, and that's something I encourage my audience and viewership to do. If you guys have Arabic related or Quran language related questions especially, I can't answer every question, but those in particular I take my time to answer, and I also share those with my students. so they can see that these are the kinds of questions other students of the Quran in Arabic are asking, and here's how you would answer them. So that's beneficial for them also. So these were the few brief questions that people had asked that I wanted to address. There were some others. Somebody asked the question of the difference between min and fi, and not everybody that's listening to this knows Arabic. But I'll briefly mention, when Allah mentions prophets being min anfusihim, from the people, from their own selves, a prophet came from within themselves, it actually means the origin of the prophet is their own people, meaning the Arab prophet from the Arab people, etc. But on the other side, when you have fi anfusihim, then fi means in their midst, meaning not just a prophet who originally is from them, but who lived among them, who was immersed in them, who spent time with them, who knew of their behavior. So there are two different kinds of angles being highlighted. On the day of judgment, prophets will be raised, a witness will be raised from among the people. When he uses the word from or min, he's suggesting that the person who will speak out against the people will be one of their own. So they'll be shocked. How can you be speaking about us? You're one of our own. You should be biased towards us, not on the day of judgment. On the other side, Allah says, نَبْعَثُ فِي كُلِّ أُمَّةٍ. The word fi is used, fi anfusihim. And that means that when he rises and testifies, not only is his testimony authentic because he's originally from them, but actually he was in their midst. He lived among them. He has the experiences that they had, and he saw their behaviors, and he's witness to all of it. And he's not just a cursory bystander who, when you see something happen and you think you know what happened, but people who know those people, know the event, know the full scope of the conversation. To give you an example of that, if you hear two people having a conversation and you pass by, you heard some things from that conversation, but you don't know the whole story. But the people that are close friends with them, who have been not only part of that conversation, but all the other conversations, they know the whole story, so they're more in a position to comment on what's really going on in that conversation. So that's fi anfusihim, that's from within themselves. It highlights a different dimension of why that testimony is authentic. So finally, this is not related to any of your questions. This is just a recent experience I had that I wanted to talk about, that's inspired me to do something that I'm going to be announcing, inshallah. So listen up. So I go to this place, this place to eat, and there are some people that are just sitting there, and I'm with family, and they're sitting there and they're looking at me, and they kind of look at me oddly, and then they go and take their place. They sit down. I don't know, maybe they don't like me too much or something, but they clearly recognized who I was. And then, they're talking to each other, and the lady then comes back into the area where I'm sitting in the restaurant, and she passes by me, and nobody else is there. She passes by me, goes to the other end, turns around, puts her bag down, stares at me, then picks her bag up and goes back out again, and then starts talking to, something about myself, or I would imagine, I don't know. But constantly staring, just constantly staring. And not staring in a nice kind of way, like, hey, are you that guy? People come up to me and say, hey, are you like Mufti Menk? No, I'm not Mufti Menk, I'm the other guy on YouTube. But, not like that. But in a really, truly rude way. It even made people I was sitting with uncomfortable. And as I walked out, I decided to walk right past them to give them an opportunity to maybe say salam or whatever. And they were in the middle of trying to figure something out, and as I walked, they kind of nodded to each other and both put their heads down, like they'll pretend that I'm not there, and they'll walk by. And these were people that clearly Muslim, sisters in hijab and whatever, and I just thought to myself, this kind of behavior, like acting so strange and staring at people and not saying salam to them and clearly talking about them but not talking to them. There's some basic mannerisms that we're all supposed to have. This doesn't hurt me in any way. It doesn't cost me anything. Anybody could do that, and what should I care? But the problem is, it makes me realize that even when we, people observe the religion in some things, like we observe the religion in how we dress, or maybe a beard, or, observing prayer in the masjid and things like that, there's some basic manners and the way we're supposed to carry ourselves towards each other with our words and with our body language and the way we look at each other and these kinds of things. We just don't have that basic education. We just don't seem to have this, or if we do, we ignore it. So I feel that it's important to go back to some of those basics. And in my mind, in teaching Islam, or teaching the values of Islam, you could basically, there's many ways of looking at it. You could break it up into three things. You could teach the basics of our beliefs, right? No, they certainly weren't starstruck, let me tell you. They were not starstruck. They were, if anything, they looked offended or angry. But anyway, So the one side of it is, they're the basics and fundamentals of our belief. Another side of it is the second kind of basics are the basics of our rituals: how to pray, how to purify yourself, what to do when you fast, what are the adhkar to make, how do you do hajj, etc., etc. Those are the basics of rituals. So we've got the basics of our belief, and we've got the basics of our rituals. But then there's the hikam, the wisdom of our religion, which is about how do you deal with yourself, how do you deal with your family, how do you deal with people outside, how are men supposed to deal with women, how are women supposed to deal with men, how are siblings supposed to treat each other, how are we supposed to speak to each other or about each other, how are we supposed to carry ourselves. And I feel like there's so much emphasis on the beliefs and on the rituals, and even on the halal and the haram, the prohibited and the permissible, and yet when it comes to this fundamental, like, what makes us decent human beings, dealing with each other, how to talk to one another, how to communicate with one another, how to carry ourselves, how to not make someone feel uncomfortable and awkward, how to not do that, how to not cut somebody off in conversation, those kinds of things. Those are the things we ignore, and they're not even a part of Islam, and yet they are such a fundamental part of Islam. It's actually the characteristic that was proof that the Prophet ﷺ can only be from God. إِنَّكَ لَعَلَى خُلُقٍ عَظِيمٍ. That you carry yourself with great manners. You have great manners that you're committed to, So there's iman on the other side, there's the akhlaq on the other side. So I'm thinking, that I'm going to start a little, social media series on just some of these things that Allah, emphasize that they're not just values of Islam, really. They're values of human fitrah. Like every human being has certain decent values that we kind of need to, revive in ourselves. So I'm going to be doing something inspired by that series or by that event called Bayyinah Basics. And it's not to put those people down. I wouldn't name them or name the restaurant or anything like that. But I hope that it's something that I can benefit from and that you guys can benefit from also, inshallah ta'ala. Jazakumullahu khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.